Cholula. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It is Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Cholula, as in sauce. As in the New York Jets trading Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts in a trade that sent shockwaves throughout the NFL universe, which means it sent shockwaves through the entire universe. If you're only hearing about this trade today, I'm very jealous of you. It has led to some of the funniest takes I've seen in sports by fans, by media. Full panic by everybody. It is rare in sports when you look at a trade that happens. Now, let me go back. Sauce Gardner, cornerback, first round pick by the Jets, signed long-term by the Jets only recently. Jets 1-7, new coach, Aaron Glenn, stink. Indianapolis Colts, new quarterback, Daniel Jones. Giants fans, this is for you. 7-2, awesome. The possibility, as Dominique Foxworth pointed out, minute one before the season started, that this Indianapolis Colts team could be good. Here we are, 9 games in, and they're good. So the Colts trade 2 first-round picks plus a wide receiver to the Jets in order to get Sauce Gardner in his contract. And Colts fans are concerned that it was too much. We gave up too much. First-round picks in the NFL are the equivalent of finding a crypto account password in the things of a dead relative and saying, wow, this was unexpected and not subject to estate tax. It is the feeling that you have gold. Collecting first-round picks is a thing that teams in the NFL do instead of winning. Collecting first-round picks is what teams in the NBA try to do, and other than Oklahoma City, don't win while they're doing. I have explained my view of tanking for Tua and what a mistake that is. There are no guarantees in the first round of any sport. In the NFL, the first round is meant to get you players who help you immediately, as opposed to baseball. It is meant to get you players to form the cornerstone, the foundation of your team. But isn't the object of your team to get past the point where the first round picks are the cornerstone and get to the winning? Why is it that fans and media have the right to complain when teams engage in quote unquote a fire sale, when teams rebuild, and then also complain when teams are adding to win now, or as people like to say, going all in? Does that not just mean that we all like to complain no matter what side of the fence we are on, thinking about the tint of grass that we see? I'm especially hurt by the reactions of both teams in this trade, because if you are the New York Jets and you are running that team, why is it that you call the trading of Sauce Gardner or the defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, who the Jets, another all-pro player, who the Jets traded, although I don't know that he's all-pro, but he's just really good, Coca, trading him to the Cowboys, accruing all of these first-round picks in 26 and 27. What is your level of angst as a Jets fan? Breaking up the team? Starting over? Rebuilding? How would you not encourage the possibility of choosing picks over players if you are the New York Jets? Because the combination of players you have currently is not good enough. They are 1-7. The combination of players the Jets have had for a decade, it's not good enough. You are not breaking up a team that is a winning team. You are moving pieces off a losing team in an effort to what I'd like to refer to as a reallocation. A reallocation of assets is when you have a good player in one position, you want to turn it into a good player in another position. Why is it that teams, front offices, cannot go down that road? Maybe the Jets' view is that they want to take their first round pick that they have, the first round pick they got from the Colts, the 2 second-round picks they have next year, plus the 3 first-round picks they have in 2027 because of the trades they made yesterday. What if they want to package that and they want to get a quarterback? What if they want to package that and they want to get Micah Parsons, and I'm making that name up, but an example of a game changer in a way that Sauce Gardner's good. He hasn't played particularly well this season, but he is a very, very good cornerback. I would take all those first-round picks and build the greatest offensive line of any team. I would take those first-round picks and see if you can manage to grab a quarterback in a draft and then be right. And then be right. And then be right. Isn't what you're complaining about that the teams who lose are just wrong in their evaluation of players? Aren't you just complaining about that the teams who lose are wrong in the combination of players whom they've chosen incorrectly? Football is not unlike baseball. You can have a top quarterback and not win. You can have a top defense and not win. You need a combination of team. It's why allocating all that money to a quarterback like the Dolphins did with Tua and having Tua not being good enough means that you are destined to mediocrity, if not total crappiness, because there's no way in a salary cap situation to win when you have misallocated your cap resources. Why can't we allow the Jets some grace? Why can't we allow any teams grace, any people grace? I grant you that you're upset. You're upset because they haven't won. Shouldn't you be more upset if they keep doing the same thing? And as for those Colts fans, it's been crap. In the post-Manning world, what do you have? This year, you've got something. It may not be enough. At the end of the day, you may not even make it to the AFC Championship. But man, oh man, don't you want the opportunity? Don't you want to get instead of thinking who the first round picks will be that you've given up for Sauce Gardner, don't you want to believe that you bring him onto your team and that he can complement a defense that has been subpar compared to an offense that has been outstanding? Isn't it about thinking that the Colts are building a complete team and how thankful you should be for this opportunity? But now we get to the meat of the conversation, which is the ability to be unhappy, the ability to complain. The realization that winning a championship is fleeting no matter what. The understanding that the Dodgers won an unbelievable World Series only this past Saturday, and it's done. We're now talking about who's opting in and out of their contracts, who's a free agent, the GM meeting's coming up, what rule changes are going to happen, what's happening with all sorts of situations in baseball. It's a moment. I was texting with someone who works for the Dodgers. And that person, I said, hey, congratulations. You're another ring. What a great moment. And the response was, I'll enjoy it for 48 to 72 hours and then right back to work. And of course, I thought back to my World Series where I had the same view. And now I look back decades and I think to myself, when I'm just chasing something and I keep moving the goalpost, then all I'm doing is subjecting myself to a life of never catching anything. If I keep being dissatisfied with what I accomplish in a moment, then I'm subject to a life of misery and the feeling of failure. I think that we should, in every situation, we should embrace the success of the moment. We should revel in it. We should take a picture of it in our brain. And then if you so choose to go to the next thing that you want to be judged by, don't lose track of that success that you had. It is a fine line between glory days, living in the past, and having a fulfilling life. But I'll tell you right now, when you have a chance to win and you know it's only going to last a moment, grab it. Grab it. Of course, we're subject to something else, which is what happens when we try to grab a moment, what happens when we try to go all in on that moment. The feeling, the flailing that we all have when we don't get to where we want to get to, no matter what the expectation was, no matter how unrealistic it was. The Toronto Blue Jays, Coke, I cannot believe that I had a bunch of Blue Jays fans. Thank you to everyone who watches from Canada. There's an ever-growing percentage of you, and we appreciate that. But why was there a complaint, Coca, that we didn't give the Blue Jays enough flowers on Monday's show post-World Series? That we weren't showing the right amount of love for a season? I'll remedy it. The reason I did it is I wanted to deal with the champions on Monday. I wanted to deal with the pennant winners on Wednesday. Let's face it, winning the pennant, really cool. Losing the World Series, less than optimal. I have to be consistent with my approach. There are 29 losers in Major League Baseball. Toronto was only the latest loser. Every year. And now it's done. Where do they go from here? What do you do when you get so close, when you are building your team? When your fans can taste it, when your owner thinks to himself, we had it in our grasp. 2 inches of growth spurt away from winning a World Series. 1 foot of an extra secondary lead from winning a World Series. Here's what you do. You look at who your free agents are, and you say to yourself, is running it back with the same team going to give us the opportunity to take the next step? Let me give you some evidence. The New York Mets went to the League Championship Series. They were semifinalists. Then they went out and got Juan Soto. And then they didn't make the playoffs. The Boston Red Sox traded Rafi Devers to the San Francisco Giants in a, what people referred to, horrible trade. The San Francisco Giants sat and watched the Boston Red Sox lose in the first round to the New York Yankees. Trades that are made, decisions that are made on contracts. Let's just take Bo Bichette, the player who all Blue Jays fans want to make sure remains a Blue Jay. Let's take Sir Anthony Dominguez, the bullpen arm that was counted on by the Blue Jays. Command issues, unbelievable movement, a solid bullpen arm. And let's think about what a team should do with these players. 1, a bullpen arm, totally replaceable. 1, a well above average potential superstar in Bo Bichette. As the Toronto Blue Jays are putting their team together, they have spoken to Ed Rogers, their owner, and they have gotten a payroll for next season. The payroll for next season will certainly get a bump because of the extra incremental revenue that the Blue Jays received by making it all the way through the maximum number of home games they could have had. The Toronto Blue Jays are not guaranteed to have access to every bit of money that Rogers Communications made with postseason revenue, because any responsible owner would not allocate the full amount of revenue that was incrementally acquired. And the reason is that next season, the odds that Toronto makes it back to the World Series are incredibly small. The feeling that a fan has to have the same group of players come back and have the opportunity to take the next step is a feeling that is not shared by front offices. Front offices look at the makeup of their team and they recognize the moment. They recognize what happened during the course of the year that actually enabled them to get where they got to, and then realize even where they got to was not ring worthy. When the Blue Jays have an existing payroll of almost $200 million, and that is only before arbitration, before filling out your roster, but that is in obligations as we sit here today, including Shane Bieber's $16 million that he opted into as a player option. Side note, Coca, be very worried if you're the Blue Jays, please. The only reason Shane Bieber opted into his $16 million player option is that he could not get more than $16 million guaranteed by anyone else. Do not buy into, oh, we love Toronto. The old Max Scherzer family Instagram post. This was a life-changing experience. We are family. We couldn't be happier. This was the greatest experience we could ever have. Well, I think it was probably greater in Washington when you won a title, but I could be wrong. I'm certainly not going to walk into the shoes of a husband and wife and their children as they decide that living in Toronto is greater than living in Detroit or Texas or Washington. I am merely saying that when players come out and talk about not wanting to leave, they talk about, I would spend the rest of my career here. They talk about how great it is to be in a certain place. It is very often negotiating. It is not a coincidence that Max Scherzer is a free agent. He may want to continue playing. He may not. He's of the age where retiring above 40 would not be a surprise, obviously, to anyone. But you look at the makeup of your team and you know that you need some turnover. You know that you're fine not re-signing Dominguez. You know that you're fine not bringing back Ty France, Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett. Don't bring any of them back. The biggest decision the Blue Jays have to make on where they go from here is whether or not they overpay for Bo Bichette. I understand Bo Bichette's regular season. I understand the complementary way that he is with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the lineup. I also understand that there are ways to allocate money in order to make your team deeper. The way the Blue Jays need to act with their top 5 payroll should be a lot more like the Dodgers. The reason why the Dodgers are here in the middle of a dynasty is depth. That depth is because of money. Rogers Communications has an opportunity to help with the Blue Jays' depth. The allocation that will be needed, the deferrals that could be used, all of the tricks that are done by the Dodgers to make sure that they've got the maximum number of players at each position so that they can engage in load management, those are the differentiating factors. If you've got a player on your horizon that takes that flexibility away, you've got to be able to say no, even when you are the holders of the pennant. It is going to be quite interesting what the Toronto Blue Jays do, as it was with last year's National League Championship Series losers, the New York Mets. The offseason will begin and has begun. We had some news about some managerial changes that took place in baseball. But what I want to do here is the top five. I don't think we have any music for top fives because we're not Dan show, but I want to do a top five off-season storyline right now because we're in it. It's hard to imagine. 4 nights later, we are in the off-season. Top five storylines for the off-season. Number 5. Managerial openings. Of course, I wanted to have that as my number 5 so I could give you the opportunity to say, congratulations to Atlanta. You have a new manager, Walt Weiss. Congratulations to the Nationals. You have a new manager. Boy, is he young, Blake Butera. Congratulations to the Minnesota Twins. You have a retread, Derek Shelton. Congratulations. Congratulations to the Giants. You hired Tony Vitello. Yes, it won't translate from college, I promise, but congratulations. Congratulations to the Angels fans. You've got Kurt Suzuki. That's it. You now don't have Kurt Suzuki. Congratulations to the Rangers. You have Skip Schumacher. Yes, the old manager of the year for the Marlins. Congratulations to the Padres. You have Matthew Coca as your manager. The Padres don't have a manager. Neither do the Rockies. The reason why managerial openings is a top 5 offseason storyline is you are seeing teams go one of 2 directions. You are seeing, hey, I want to retread, or hey, I want to try someone who's never managed before, or hey, I want to see if we can get a big league manager who has the qualities, the attributes of leaders of men. Managerial openings are important to a team's offseason, but not nearly as important as what they do on the free agent market, on the margins, what they do on the minor league free agent market, what they do as they figure out their own roster. Believe me, that is a bigger story, but managerial openings are what's always discussed by the media. Not sure why. Number 4, broadcast deals. Boy, there's so much to talk about with this, Coca. We could talk about YouTube TV and Disney right now, or we could do that in the second hour. We could talk about Netflix and whether or not they are getting into live sports in a way that's a little different than they have in terms of events, whether they are going to be part of a new MLB package. We could talk about NBC getting baseball. We could talk about ESPN not leaving and not losing baseball. We can tell you again about the great work Noah Garden does as the deputy commissioner in baseball. We can remind you that opting out of the ESPN deal has accrued to the benefit of Major League Baseball. But what we need to have you continue to think about this offseason is the lining up of Major League Baseball broadcast deals in a way that enables Major League Baseball to approach the NBA in terms of the overall value of their broadcast deals as the single fastest and best way to build franchise valuations. Reminder, that's the commissioner's job. Not to placate the audience and the fans, not to make baseball a better sport, not to be a steward of baseball and traditionalists, not to be in love with the trophy or not to love all of the charitable work and all the great things that the commissioners have done for all these decades. The number one way that a commissioner is paid is by having his teams worth more. and Major League Baseball has fallen way behind the NBA in franchise valuations, and the only way they will catch them, it's not by having a Game 7 so highly rated. It's not by the international appeal of all the Japanese players who are coming to Major League Baseball and have in the past and are coming next season. More on that next. It is simply about getting more of the billionaires, more of the people looking at baseball franchises as something they want. So the broadcast deals have this impact, this far-reaching impact, and they're only number 4. The number 3 offseason storyline is free agency. Are you ready for it? Are you jacked up for all the predictions? Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers, $400 million over 10 years. Book it. If Kyle Tucker is not a New York Yankee, then Brian Cashman is an irresponsible dolt who should be fired. If the Phillies don't overpay and re-sign Kyle Schwarber, then what are they doing? They're not even trying. You want to let JT Realmuto go? Fine. Free agency is my number 3 story of the offseason because for you, it's always your number 1 story because you want confirmation bias about how you feel about your team. You want to feel like crap if there's not a big free agent signing, and you want to feel great. But this is the first of what I promise will be at least, and I mean this, at least 10 reminders prior to March 25th, which is the opening game between the Yankees and Giants, a standalone game the night of the 25th. This will be one of the 10 times I remind you, winning the offseason in Major League Baseball is meaningless. There is zero correlation between winning the offseason and winning the World Series. Zero. I've done both. Won the offseason and won the World Series. Trust me, not related. But for whatever reason, every single year, the fans, the same ones who are upset about the Jets trade, the same one who gets worried about, are we giving up too much? Are we doing as much as we could or should to put ourselves in the best position that we can be, want to be? Believe me, the best free agent signings are going to be the ones that the media doesn't even talk about. They're mentioned as a transaction. You'll see. Number 2, we are only, I think it's from right now, 4 months away from the opening of the World Baseball Classic. Why is the World Baseball Classic one of the great offseason storylines? It's not because of the great team that Mike Hill is building for Team USA. It's not whether or not Team USA can win, whether Japan can repeat, whether or not Ohtani is going to pitch or play, whether or not he could face Trout, which he won't, but the new Trout, because there's so many new Trouts right now. The reason why the WBC is such a top offseason storyline is that it enables baseball to start the engagement way earlier for games and on the heels of the engagement that comes during an offseason of storylines, of free agents. The WBC is on its way to being what we dreamt about when we started the WBC. It was a replacement for the Olympics. It was a way to try to emulate and copy what other leagues do around the world as they try and other sports do. World Cup. It is a way to build interest, not just internationally, but in the United States at a time that is so critical for collective bargaining, for broadcast deals, for franchise asset valuation. The WBC has become a tentpole of excitement for all interested parties within Major League Baseball. Broadcasters, fans, executives, players. It has become something that is must-see TV. 4 months away. And the number 1 off-season storyline, I'm sorry, but this is nothing personal with David Samson. Hi, I'm David Samson. Thank you very much for subscribing. Please, the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. Join us, 7 a.m. Watch us on the DraftKings Network. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Just engage, because you're going to hear a lot about the number one topic, the CBA. You may think that that should be the number one topic next offseason, when the CBA will expire at the end of 2026. But what happens during the course of this offseason will be just as, if not more important than what happens next offseason. Even if next offseason comes with a work stoppage, which it will, even if next offseason comes with rhetoric to the max, like rhetoric on steroids about the positions that the owners and the players are taking. Even though that's what next offseason is, the reason the CBA is the biggest offseason storyline is one of the only ways to avoid a protracted work stoppage is for the foundations that are being built this offseason through negotiating sessions, which are going to happen, through off-the-record meetings between leadership of baseball and the union, which are going to happen, through the communication of the commissioner's office with the 30 teams about taking the temperature of their desire to fight both with themselves and the players. All of that is happening this offseason. All of that will help inform us of what we are to think about the next stoppage or the next agreement. Watch for that. That will be the dominant offseason storyline, at least as far as we're concerned. Coca, let's go to the review, please. Time to review. I am still, just so we can catch up, there'll be more to talk about. I believe Monday is going to be the day. We have a show tomorrow. Coca will join us. We then will be back Monday. It has been about a month, I believe, since I was able to update everyone on what's going on with me. I want to be able to give you an update of some sort on Monday. Stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I'm still afflicted by something that I don't know how to get rid of, Coca, but I'm trying, and it's getting slightly better, but not much. I am not quite back to watching a movie every day, but I am back to watching part of a movie every day. I am not able to sit through a full movie. I don't have either the patience or the time, although I do have the time. That's not accurate. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm not able to focus or concentrate. I did watch a movie called Adulthood in the last 2 days. Adulthood is the new movie with Josh Gad. Adulthood is a movie about an individual who has a sister and a mother, and the mother may or may not have done something bad. And the sister may or may not want to cover up that bad thing. And the brother may or may not be someone who makes questionable choices. The concept of adulthood is captured perfectly by Josh Gad and his co-stars. And the reason why it is so important for you to watch it, even notwithstanding the mediocre rating on IMDb, which is not founded because of the performance of Josh Gad as not just someone who's funny, not just someone who's musically inclined, but someone who actually has acting chops, dramatic acting chops. It's the decisions we make where we talk about the cover-up being worse than the crime. When we talk about what kids would do for their parents, what parents would do for their kids, and whether or not, and we've seen this happen. Remember the show, Your Honor, with Bryan Cranston? The things that people do. There was another movie we reviewed about what lengths parents would go for their children. And believe me, I know about this. What lengths children would go for their parents is the angle of adulthood. Forcing Josh Gad into adulthood, what some would say is too little too late. What I would say is just premature for his character. I was totally entertained by this movie. I encourage you to watch it. Tomorrow's Thursday. As a reminder, we will be reviewing one of my top 100 movies. We are getting down to the end of it, where we will have had 100 Thursdays together. That top 100 list can be found at davidsamsonpodcast.com. Go there, check out the merch, check out everything we do with this show. Make sure you look at the tracking document to keep track. We will be reviewing Lost in Translation tomorrow. Nothing personal pick of the day. I got to talk about the Cowboys. The Cowboys were favored by 3.5 points on Monday night. Jerry Jones said something since Monday's show that to me, Coca, is inexplicable and inexcusable, and maybe something that we knew to be true the whole time. Jerry Jones all but acknowledged what we had long speculated, that being in the news and making news is a priority, and that as GM of the team, winning games has not been the priority because the owner of the team has made it very clear that they would prefer to be in the news for any reason whatsoever. Speculation rampant. Did Jerry Jones trade Micah Parsons for the drama? Speculation rampant that Jerry Jones appearing in TV shows, appearing in movies, it's all about Jerry Jones and satiating the insatiable ego that we know he has. Jerry Jones recognizing that the value of his team as the most valuable franchise in the world is a position that he takes quite seriously and gives him carte blanche in his mind to not win. I, of course, made the mistake thinking, hold on, the Cowboys are playing the Cardinals with Jacoby Brissett. Kyler Murray's out. By the way, Brissett's been named the number one starter. Coincidentally, Murray's out, so it's not really choosing him over Murray, though maybe he's better than Murray. But the Cardinals not just covered against the Cowboys, they won the whole damn game. That was a terrible pick. The Cowboys stink. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is for me that it doesn't matter. It doesn't change their value by one bit. $1. It doesn't change the number of people who go to games and the number of dollars that are spent on those games. It just means we lost our pick of the day. But we were able to give you a split. How many of you did not take the Heat Clippers over because you said, wait a minute, I've never heard David do an over-under in the NBA, no less? What could he have been thinking? Well, the final score of that game was 120 to 119, which, of course, you can do the math, I would hope, and find that's more than 228.5 points. I hope that you recognize that when you score 239 points, it's more than 228.5, and we had ourselves a winner. Why was I interested in that over? I explained it to you Monday. I'll remind you again. Adam Silver has created a game where he wants no one to think about the 90s Knicks. He never wants to see an 87 to 84 game or a 94 to 90 game. He has made it, along with the owners, that the game they want to see in the NBA is complete chuck and duck. Back and forth, three-pointers taken. No basketball plays actually being called other than isolations. I think I'm going to do a lot more over-unders, but not tonight. Tonight, we got the Philadelphia Sixers back-to-back. Are we ready to call this, Coca? It's got to be too early, I would think. We can't call the Sixers a surprise team now, can we? We can't. It's not appropriate after 10 games to say who's good, who's not. I don't think. I mean, do you, Coca? I just asked you about Oklahoma City going 8-0, and you were less than interested because you said, David, you told me the regular season doesn't matter, so why are we caring? Does it matter that Philadelphia is 5-2, second best record in the Eastern Conference, behind a team you'd never guess, the Chicago Bulls? Well, playing back-to-back against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have struggled. They're barely in the play-in at 4-3. We're taking the Cavs -9.5 in a blowout over the Sixers on the second of a back-to-back. That is our nothing personal pick of the day. I want to mention the announcement that was made yesterday about the contemporary ballot in the Hall of Fame. This is going to get a ton of attention. Let me explain. Hall of Fame matters in Major League Baseball. We all pay attention. You watched Ichiro get inducted this past July. It is obviously getting 75% from the writers on your first ballot or within the first 10 years on the ballot. That is heaven. You are the elite of the elite. The Hall of Fame and Major League Baseball have combined to say there are some mistakes that are made by the writers. There are some players who do not make the Hall of Fame who should be Hall of Famers. What do we do about it? And what they do about it is something called the Eras Committees. The Eras Committees are made up of several different committees. The one we want to talk about today is the Contemporary Era Committee. The contemporary baseball era are players who have significantly contributed to the game after 1980. Yes, it makes me feel very happy that we are still contemporaries. The contemporary baseball era player ballot was announced yesterday with some fascinating names on it. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. Let me start with those two. There are 16 people on the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. 16 people chosen by the Hall of Fame Board. The Hall of Fame Board is a group of people. I just want to read this to you, if you don't mind. And I'm going to look right now because we're live. And I'm going to read to you who are the Hall of Fame board members. And I want to know whether any of them sound familiar to you. Joe Torre, Bill DeWitt, Ken Kendrick, Rob Manfred, Artie Moreno, Jerry Reinsdorf. Any of those names sound familiar? The reason why it interests me to tell you about this is that Major League Baseball is intimately involved in the board of directors of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. The board of directors chooses who will be on the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. That committee will meet on December 7th during the winter meetings, 16 of them, made up of executives, made up of players, made up of legends. And they will vote on whether Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens, as two of the members on this ballot, whether they will be Hall of Famers. Of the 16 members, 12 are required to vote for Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens for them to gain induction into the Hall of Fame. They have no chance. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will not be in the Hall of Fame. They will not be in the plaque room. No matter your view of steroids, no matter your view of the greatness of pre-steroid Bonds and Clemens in theory, they're not going to make it in. What about Carlos Delgado? How could Carlos Delgado have not remained on the Baseball Hall of Fame ballot? How could the writers, and I have great respect and a great relationship with many people who have a vote, how could it have been so wrong? Well, guess what? What this ballot committee does, it tries to right the wrongs. Carlos Delgado, interesting. Don Mattingly, interesting. Gary Sheffield, interesting. Fernando Valenzuela, not a Hall of Famer, but man, what a great story it would be to have him put in posthumously. What will this committee do? Will they allow Dale Murphy and Jeff Kent into the hallowed halls of the plaque room? The reason why this is so newsworthy today is that the steroid era, which is since 1980, quite obviously, is still so raw with baseball owners and baseball commissioner. It is still a bone of angst that does not exist in the zeitgeist of discourse surrounding the Hall of Fame. It's why you have so many people who are good with Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens being in the Hall of Fame. It's why you've got so many people who stand up and say, you know what? Everybody's done something. This is not the Hall of Character. It's not the Hall of Moral Compass. It's the Hall of Fame, recognizing the best players in baseball, whatever they did, from spitballs to KY jelly, from steroids to uppers to greenies, from juice balls to dead balls, from mound raising to larger first bases. There are always going to be changes within the game. There's always going to be changes of how to react to players and what their accomplishments are and how you measure those accomplishments against the peers. But steroids is different. During meetings that I had within Major League Baseball, during conversations I've had regarding the Hall of Fame vote, it has always been clear to me from minute one that there are certain players who are associated with steroids who will pass. There's certain players who will be looked as Hall of Famers, voted into the Hall of Fame, even with a small amount of steroid taint. There are others who are simply not part of the conversation. Bonds and Clemens are the latter group. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, fine. Wait to see, Coca. This is official. The contemporary baseball era player ballot will be heard December 7th. Bonds and Clemens will not be elected into the Hall of Fame. Wait for it. There will be somebody, and his name will be Dale Murphy. Dale Murphy will be voted in. Wait to see. We have a second hour coming up of So You Want to Talk to Samson. One of you thankfully asked about Pablo Torre. I can't wait to get to my answer to your question about Pablo and the latest that's going on with the Clippers. We still have this hour coming up after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Samson on a Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Wednesday second hour means that you get to hear this. Oh, he doesn't have it yet. Why don't you have the music so you want to talk to Samson? Like it should be a full like, dun 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 dun. So you want to talk to Samson? That's what the second hour is. I got a few questions here. Let me explain how this works. For those of you new to the show, and we're still building an audience, which is amazing, still growing. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, play it, Coca.
You know what I want? I want to talk to Samson.
So you want to talk to Samson comes from a movie called Half Baked. I can only tell you that being half baked is half a great plan. Being fully baked is a fully great plan. There's a character in the movie called Samson, and people want to talk to him. So we figured, why not come up with a phone number, 631, area code, 377 DPS, 4869. Reset. Nice. 631-377-4869. Leave a message. We set a record this past week as we were figuring out which voicemails to listen to. The record, Coca, somebody left a 7-minute voicemail. For the life of me, listen, we don't pay by the gigaboot. It's fine. Do whatever you want. But here's the thing. I get when I'm going through the voicemails, it tells me in advance, because of technology, how long the voicemail is. First, I thought 7 minutes was like, oh, they didn't hang up. But I've got this toggle device, Coca, that I can go and start listening to it. Then I can toggle. Is he still talking at minute 3? Oh, my God. Still talking at minute 5? Can't be. Still talking at minute 6:45? Are you kidding me? Needless to say, it didn't make the show. But you can reach me other ways. You can email me. You can go on Twitter at David P. Samson, get into my DM. You can DM me. Email me at davidsamsonpodcast.com. Instagram. Anywhere you can find me, ask me a question. I had my first experience last week with someone doing a So You Want to Talk to Samson. When they met me in person, it was actually in a hospital, which is bizarre. Someone who recognized me and had a question that wanted to be addressed on the show. And I just realized, yes, if you see me out and about and you just want to ask a question, that's another way to get on the show. Here's another possible way if you're angling to have your question answered. Make it pertinent to a topic that you think I'm going to want to discuss. So, for example, hi, David. I always like the hellos. I always like the highs. I like the friendliness of it. I can only imagine you are excited to talk more about the Los Angeles Clippers and Steve Ballmer because of your relationship with Pablo Torre. I would assume that we are going to hear from you about the latest lawsuit. Now, was that a nice question? Was that an inquisitive question? I don't know, but it made the show because you can bet your sweet bippy that we're going to talk about what Pablo Torre came up with. Except it's not as epic as people are making it out to be. And you know I love you, Pablo. And you know I give you all the credit in the world when you're finding out some stuff that is totally awesome. Here's the backstory. Way back on September 3rd, there was an episode that Pablo did where I was part of it, as well as Amin Al-Hassan, talking about salary cap circumvention. Pablo Torre's first episode as part of a new deal. That story has continued. There are legal sides to it, not related to NBA salary cap circumvention. The legal sides are the fraud that was basically led by the CEO of a company that helped Steve Ballmer engage in salary cap circumvention. That company is called Aspiration. There are guilty pleas. There are hundreds of millions of dollars that have been lost. Way back in July, there was a lawsuit that was filed by the aggrieved parties in this Aspiration fraudulent scheme. A lawsuit was filed against the executives of Aspiration, the founder of Aspiration, alleging that, hey, you made up a bunch of stuff about your company. Your numbers aren't real. We gave money thinking that we'd get a return on the investment. Instead, we got screwed. It's the anti-investing in a Broadway play or a movie, where you go in saying, hey, I'd like to meet and break bread with a celebrity, but I'm likely going to lose money. I'd like to be associated with this, but I'm likely not going to get a return. When you invest in a company, regardless that it's a green company that's making the world a better place, supposedly, give me a small break, and it's found out that you invested under false pretenses, you're going to have a problem. And so investors did. Then the lawyers, the people who lost their money, watched Pablo Torre finds out on September 3rd. They looked at this mug. They heard a discussion about what Steve Ballmer had done, and they said, can we maybe amend our existing lawsuit to include Steve Ballmer? Because I didn't realize that that was even a possibility. Because in any lawsuit, what good does it do suing a bankrupt company and a man who likely secreted his assets in offshore accounts while he's going to sit there with soap on a rope? If we can maybe include somebody who's rich, let's do it. And now we've got an entire episode where this guy, Pablo Torre, is saying that Steve Ballmer was somehow involved in nefarious activities with Aspiration. And guess what? We don't care what Adam Silver or Wachtell Lipton discover. It doesn't matter to us whether or not there was salary cap circumvention. All that we need is for there to be the appearance of salary cap circumvention, and we can add it to a lawsuit. So Pablo Torre got word of a similar lawsuit to that filed in July. No, that's not the fact, folks. That's what's being reported. The fact is, it's the same lawsuit back in July. They just added another defendant. And the defendant's name happens to be Steve Ballmer. That's all that happened. They added Ballmer to an existing lawsuit, and then they explained, hey, we were pretty sure that we were going to win with the original lawsuit we filed about how we were defrauded. But now, all you have to do is listen to a podcast, and you see that Steve Ballmer was a part of this. That the salary cap circumvention, the reason why we didn't get a return on our investment is they were throwing money out to Kawhi Leonard, who was part of a no-show deal, who wasn't deserving of a dollar, forget $28 million. It makes unbelievable legal sense to add Steve Ballmer to an existing lawsuit like this. The thing is, in terms of likeliness of prevailing, in terms of convincing a jury or a judge that there is a relationship between Steve Ballmer and Aspiration, such relationship having caused and having abetted the fraud and caused loss of money that requires compensation, that's another thing entirely. The courts are not going to opine on whether there was salary cap circumvention. Believe me, they don't care. What the courts will opine on is whether or not these investors were defrauded and whether or not Steve Ballmer was working with Aspiration in an effort to defraud. And what should be interesting to all of you is that Steve Ballmer himself is claiming that he was defrauded as well. Steve Ballmer should be a plaintiff in this case. He should be suing Aspiration. The problem is there is a little known law on page 4 of every textbook. Thou shalt not sue thyself. Steve Ballmer cannot be the plaintiff and the defendant in the same lawsuit. NGTH, baby, not going to happen. So Ballmer, whose primary defense to the salary cap circumvention has been, dudes, I was screwed like everybody else. Who do you think Ballmer's rooting for in this lawsuit? Do you think Ballmer wants to help settle this lawsuit, get money back to the parties, the injured parties? If getting money back to the injured parties in any way can be done in a settlement that includes language that says that, in fact, salary cap circumvention did not happen, that, in fact, that Steve Ballmer himself is not contributing to the fraud, but is willing to fund the settlement, then you've got yourself a win-win for someone who's really wealthy. Steve Ballmer could step up and negotiate himself out of this lawsuit. He could step up and negotiate with the plaintiffs and give them a settlement, give them an amount of money, and then there's terms of the settlement. Oftentimes they come with confidentiality. Oftentimes they come with admissions or purposeful lack of admissions. If the settlement of this lawsuit could include in any way, shape, or form any statement that gives Steve Ballmer further credibility in his fight against the NBA, then all of a sudden these plaintiffs are brilliant for bringing Steve Ballmer into this lawsuit. Do I want to give credit to the lawyers who did it? I do. I admit it. I want them to believe that I believe that they have done something from a strategic standpoint that, boom, nobody thought of. Except everybody thinks this way. Every lawyer should, every business person should. When you have the opportunity to extract leverage, to gain a greater likelihood of prevailing in a legal claim, it is a fiduciary duty to take that path. Add in Steve Ballmer. Smart move. Here's another question that did not come in the form of a voicemail, but very smart of you to ask it. Can you please discuss what's happening with YouTube TV and its fight with Disney? It is my understanding that I'm going to now have to switch in order to watch my college football games. I don't want to take that angle, but I do want to talk about the exact issue that you are mentioning. Thank you for that email. Maybe that was a direct message. I'm not sure which. The concept here is what's going on with Disney and YouTube TV. What many of you may not know is that YouTube TV is owned by a company called Google. What many of you may not know is that Hulu is a competitor of YouTube TV. Hulu is owned by Disney. It would be in Hulu's best interest to have YouTube live TV go away. That would be more people for Hulu. To the extent that people are upset that they cannot get Disney channels like ESPN on YouTube TV, are you upset enough that you would drop YouTube TV and go to Hulu plus live TV? The way that these battles are fought in the conference rooms of some of the biggest companies and most important companies in the world, you would be not shocked to know that it's based on dollars, cents, and ego. The reason why you can't watch your Disney channels on YouTube TV is that there is a difference of opinion. Disney was going to charge YouTube TV an amount of money to get its channels, an amount of money that would cause YouTube TV to increase its prices, not just to people who like watching Disney, but to every one of their subscribers. Tell me if what I'm saying reminds you of anything where there would have to be people paying for content that they don't actually want. Is that not reminding you of what cable TV is? And what led to all of the cord cutting and the never corded? Is it not reminding you that one of the gravy trains that baseball and other sports and other companies enjoyed is that they got to charge money to a large company, NBC, CBS, Hulu, whoever? They got to charge NBC, they get Comcast. They got to charge a ton of money per subscriber. They got money to give content to an organization that gave them money back based on a charge they were able to make and put to everybody, regardless of whether they wanted the content. People bucked like a bronco eventually and said, I want to choose what I want to pay for. Let me the opportunity to not have ESPN if I don't care about sports. Don't make me pay. And what did these big companies do? They made you pay. They just made it sound different. They gave you a level of freedom that actually was not freedom at all. You are back to paying more money for everything you want to watch than you would have paid had you been the highest tier cable customer. The fight that is happening right now between YouTube TV and Disney is all about coming back around to the cable model. YouTube TV doesn't want to do it. Disney wants it to happen. Why do we have to pay attention when companies are buying other companies and you're looking at having approval, government approval of certain mergers? The reason why it is so dangerous that we have a president who right now gets involved in these business deals, who controls the commissions that were supposed to be neutral. The reason why it's such a problem is now manifesting itself in the very carriage dispute that should be bothering you to your core, not because you're a college football fan. It should be bothering you to your core because what'll happen here is when you've got Hulu owned by a larger company and that company in another arm, in another silo, is doing business with a competitor, but yet the chairman of Disney can get together and say, we are not doing a deal with YouTube TV unless they overpay and let the customers come to us at Hulu. And the president of ESPN says, well, hold on. I don't really care about all those silos. I care about mine. The reason why you need a good chairman of these big conglomerates, the reason why finding a successor to Bob Iger is so difficult, is the job that Bob Iger has is to look at all the silos and know when it's time to add to one, take away from another, when it's time to put resources into one and not another. The job of the CEO is allocation. It's a lot of refereeing jump balls, but it's allocation of existing and available resources. Do you blame Bob Iger for 1 minute trying to squeeze YouTube TV? Do you think that Bob Iger or Google or YouTube TV or Disney or ESPN, name them all, do you think that they actually give a flying rat's pituitary gland that there is a detriment to you, the customer? No. That's just marketing. That's just PR, and it's not very convincing. As a matter of fact, I could argue it's totally disingenuous. We're here for you. It's like owners when they win a championship. This is for you, fans. We are here to make your viewing experience better, more efficient, cheaper. Now they're not even pretending. They've passed that point. It's been enough years where they don't have to say the BS anymore. I'll tell you right now, under a different government, they'd be getting involved in the YouTube fight with Disney at some point here soon. They would need to find out who's doing what, why, when, and where, and whether or not there is something to change that requires governmental intervention. This current government, I'll bet you $1 that there is no intervention. All right, Coca, let's go to a voicemail, please.
Hi, David. Steve from Menlo Park, California. Certainly want to start and wish you and your family well, especially your daughter, whom I'm hoping has a miraculous recovery. My question for you involves the Clubhouse celebration preparations at Game 7. It's the top of the ninth. Dodgers are down to their last 2 outs before Miguel Rojas' home run. Is the plastic and champagne being set up in the Blue Jays locker room? Who does this? Blue Jays clubhouse staff or Major League Baseball? Again, in the 11th inning after Will Smith's home run, do those same carts of champagne and beer get moved into the Dodgers clubhouse, or do the Dodgers have their own supplies? Sounds like a stressful job. Also, what happens to all the Blue Jays World Series championship merchandise? Thanks, and David, you are not alone.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that voicemail. I want to start at the end, if you don't mind, because I had the opportunity, and I would encourage everyone, if you have the ability or desire to go outside your comfort zone. A couple of years ago, when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and then ran a marathon from the peak, I have no idea why I did that other than for the tattoo, but had a chance to travel as well in Tanzania and in other places in Africa. And do you know that MLB makes in advance? There are World Series hats for both teams. There are World Series shirts and merchandise for both teams because they make it available immediately upon the win. Have you ever wondered how can they decide? Well, they don't. They make both. And instead of wasting and throwing away the shirts that say Blue Jays World Champions 2025, all of those clothes are donated. The reason I say this is that when I was in Africa, I saw a New York Yankee 2003 World Champion shirt, a bit in tatters, and the person wearing it had no idea, because you can imagine that it interested me enough to ask, had no idea about the Yankees, the Marlins, had no idea about who's a champion, who's not, just they knew, hey, nice to have a shirt on my back. So just as a quick understanding of how that works, the clothes are donated, they are shipped, and they are worn by those in need. Just not in the U.S. 2, the old clubhouse celebration. What you think is just a matter of fact, wow, you come in, there's goggles, there's champagne. The preparation for that starts before the series starts. There is a delivery of 2 things. 1, Major League Baseball delivers sponsored locker covers to each of the playoff teams in case there is a celebration. The plastic coverings are meant to protect the players' clothes, the players' valuables from the spray of champagne and the pouring of beer. Lockers are on the outside of a clubhouse, meaning they're on the outside walls, the outside edge. It leaves the center of the clubhouse available for couches, chairs, lounging. When your team has an opportunity to clinch, the clubhouse attendant for the team, along with his or her, it's always his, workers, they clear out the center of the clubhouse. They move out the couches, the tables, etc., in order for there to be an unobstructed area for celebration. The clubhouse attendants wait until the 6th inning to start putting up the plastic over the lockers. And they know that if there is a last-minute change in result, that before the players make it to the clubhouse, because remember, the clubhouse attendants are watching the game from the clubhouse. They see if there's 2 outs in the ninth and your team is about to lose because there was a 1-out go-ahead home run. Then you change your clubhouse. You take down the plastic and you remove the champagne, which is not on a table. It is in a movable cart on wheels. There is ice and beer and liquid. All of it is movable within seconds. Within the time it takes for players to get off the field through the tunnel into the clubhouse, it will look as though you were never going to win, when minutes earlier it looked as though it was about to host the coolest party known to mankind. The supplies that are needed by a celebrating team, champagne, beer, all purchased by the individual team and that clubhouse. When we won the World Series, or just go to last week, the Dodgers and Blue Jays both had their supply of champagne. By the way, you buy the cheapest champagne ever for the pouring, like $3 bottles, and you buy nice bottles for actual toasting and drinking. You buy the cheap kind of beer for pouring, and then what the players like, the better beer for drinking. I mean, we may be silly, but we're not stupid. There's no reason to pour Dom Perignon over each other's head. We're pouring skank over our heads. That's what makes it so awesome, because you can do it with reckless disregard toward price or investment. You could pour a gazillion bottles if you so choose. But the reason they're in the cart is that you have the ability to move them on a snap. And there are places in every clubhouse, including a visiting clubhouse, where players do not access. As executives, we would go anywhere. Coaching staff, they don't roam around as much as you'd think, but we're looking at the different crevices, different rooms and clubhouses. We're wondering what's locked behind the door in Tony's clubhouse at Shea Stadium, and then we get access to it, and we're like, oh, that's a good room. That is where you put the celebratory things if you are not celebrating anything. I like that question very much, very much. All right, how about another voicemail, please?
Samson, Michael here. Can you give me the top, or maybe the top 3 biggest unsung heroes in the clubhouse in light of the World Series? I'm not talking about players. I'm talking about back-end people. Obviously, we know a lot of people go into it. Give me your top 3. Thanks.
I've never been asked that question, but we do actually rank people in the clubhouse. But come bonus time, every company is ranking every employee. Don't be foolish and don't be fooled. When you work for a company and it's time for a year-end bonus or it's time for salary increase, you're all being ranked. You're all being evaluated. Some of you know you're being evaluated because there's an HR department that actually does both evaluations up the chain and down the chain. But at some point, there is someone on a comp committee, whether it's the CFO, the treasurer, whether it's the team president, whether it's your direct boss, whatever it is. At some point, you are being valued. We did the same thing through every discipline of the team every single year. I was not in charge of ranking our amateur scouts. How could I be? I would have no way to evaluate other than what the scouting director would tell me. And I would evaluate the scouting director. I would evaluate the GM who's evaluating the scouting director. But we get a list. Here is the rankings. And it's very easy when people are in sales. You can rank people according to what they've sold. You could rank scouts according to how many big leaguers. Except you're ranking them for their performance that particular year, and there's no way to know what the amateurs who were scouted and drafted, how they will turn out. When you rank your marketing department and the employees within your marketing department, the head of marketing is going through and saying, what worked, what didn't? What and how did we work with the baseball players and the executives in order to get brand awareness and to help aid sales and increase sales? Even the finance department ranks everyone. So you're asking me to rank people in the clubhouse. We had our clubby rank clubhouse employees every year in case bonuses were coming, which they did, and in case every year, and it would help us differentiate who got what. I have never ranked the unsung heroes in the clubhouse. I love the question because it's actually relatively easy for me to do. I will start with number 3. The third most important person in the clubhouse is the shoe jock guy. Who's the shoe jock guy? The shoe guy and the jock guy are often the same person. The shoe guy is the guy who takes the shoes at the end of every game, the spikes, and sits there and cleans every shoe and makes them perfect and delivers them back into the locker, so that when the players come the next day, it's as though it's day one. Everything is clean and laundered. Everything is ready to go. The shoes are brand new. The guy who does the shoes is very often the jock guy. And what do I mean by the jock guy? That's the guy who wheels a cart around the clubhouse when players are getting nudie after a game, taking off their jock straps and throwing them in the cart in order to be washed. The thing is, you're subject to errant tosses. You're subject to pranks, and you're subject to near misses where only the strap gets around your ear and not the actual cup. It is a job that requires subjugation of your nasal cavity. It requires a sense of humor and a realization that you're about to launder a bunch of really good athletes. That's number 3. Number 2, the second unsung hero inside a clubhouse is the assistant to the chef. Every clubhouse now has chefs. Every clubhouse is required to serve amazing food, not just fast food. I've told you the stories many times about the McDonald's that we would eat at spring training in the visiting clubhouse in Fort Lauderdale when playing the Orioles. I've talked to you about Chick-fil-A that would come in, or burgers, or In-N-Out, or any combination of food that would come in on getaway days, pizza. I've talked to you about the fact that now there's nutritionists. There is this belief that if you wear a ring or a bracelet, that somehow we can learn whether you're ready to play. We can differentiate Wade Boggs, who eats fried chicken before every game, from the maximum best fuel a player can get. Why do I say the assistant chef is the unsung hero? Because they're the ones who get the players what they actually want to eat. They're the ones who get the president of the team stuff going on in the kitchen that you know that you're not supposed to have because you're tired of another wheatgrass shot. There are people whose jobs in the clubhouse are to do things that are anti what other people's jobs are in the clubhouse. The give and take of that, the dichotomy of the Brussels sprout plate followed by a side of lard, makes me smile. But the number one unsung hero is the assistant trainer. Trainers get attention. They get to go on the field when there's an injury. They're the head trainer. They get paid better. The assistant trainer is the one who's got to do stuff that would knock your socks off. I'm talking about rubbing players with icy hot. I'm talking about getting players ready to play. I'm talking about stretching players in a way that even the strength and conditioning coach doesn't do. I'm talking about making sure that you are taking care of players' needs, getting them ready to play in a way that you look at yourself and say, wow, I could use a raise. The reason why I love the assistant trainers throughout my career. Who do you think you go to when you need a little something, something in the clubhouse? Who do you go to when you're looking to cover a torn cuticle? You don't go to the trainer. You go to the assistant trainer. Those are my top 3 unsung heroes. The clubhouse is it really is like a community. It's like a society. You've got the rich, you've got the poor. You've got the people who work hard and the people who lounge around. You've got the people who are responsible for things that may actually contribute to winning, and then you've got the people who just think they are. Clubhouses are not places. There are many teams who have the view, hey, clubhouse, it's just for the players. Don't even go in there. Don't ever go in there. Leave that as their space. My view of the clubhouse, like my view of every place in the ballpark as president of the team, is they're all my space. I'm not going to interrupt or interject people who are doing their work. Do you think I'd walk into a meeting that's happening between the VP of marketing and his staff? That's why I wouldn't walk into a meeting between the manager and his players. You think that I would get in the way or try to be anything other than helpful when there's a sales department meeting with the HR department? Of course I would. So when there's stuff going on with the biggest part of our organization, why wouldn't I be a part of that? There's some presidents and GMs who go too far. I grant you that. I'll never forget when I was told by one of my GMs that, hey, do you want a locker in the clubhouse? And I said, don't be ridiculous. Of course I don't want a locker in the clubhouse. There's no way at 5'5", 65 inches, 130 pounds, and Jewish that I'm going to sit there and have a shower off. It's just not going to happen. And I thought it was a joke. But there are some team executives who do have lockers in the clubhouse because they work out and then they shower and they want a place to keep their clothes. Forget it. That wasn't for me. But who am I to yuck on somebody's yum? Next. Ooh, we're back to an actual question. David, how quickly would you have resigned if one of your employees stole money from your team? That question is way too short because you didn't say what you were talking about, though I'm going to surmise. Easy answer. I've told you about what my level of, shall we say, responsibility that I take for things that happen in my organization, which is why I get driven crazy when there are owners or presidents who say, dude, I had no idea. It's the old JLD, the old Jeff Lunau defense. I didn't know they were hitting garbage cans. What the hell would I know? Give me a small break. There is never a bigger piece of horse hockey than someone in charge saying, hey, not me, baby. We give plausible deniability to owners. Team presidents don't get that. As a team president, if I had an employee who stole something of consequence more than the value of a ticket, something that required more than just firing that particular employee, I would take full responsibility and walk in myself into the owner's office and resign. I assume your question is based on the Atlanta Hawks. Word came out yesterday that there is a executive for the Atlanta Hawks, I kid you not, got arrested and charged with fraud and embezzling. Wait for it. The Athletic did this, reported this. This executive embezzled $3.8 million. Let me try to understand what Lester Jones did. And yeah, I'm calling out that name because what you are accused of doing, I hope you're found innocent, because if you are, I promise you, I will say your name again. But in the meantime, the crime that you are being charged with is that you have somehow found a way to pay yourself money from team coffers that was meant to go toward people who were owed money, or was fake from the start because you were in a position where you could create an invoice and you created a false invoice, got paid, and kept the money. Can you imagine an employee sending a request to the accounting department saying, please pay a $230,000 Amex bill? Please pay it right now. When in fact, it was not team expenses. It was his that included vacations and a new Porsche. How is it that anyone is so stupid that they feel that they can get away with committing fraudulent activity? The irony of what I'm saying is that we talked earlier about Aspiration and the fraud that they committed. We have seen time and time again people take what's not theirs, whether from the bling ring to Bernie Madoff and everything in between. There is this feeling of invincibility that you're not going to get caught, that you've outsmarted the smart people. There are so many checks and balances and approval levels in place. There is no scenario where the Atlanta Hawks did not have someone senior signing off on a $230,000 credit card bill. It can't be. Because if it is, they should all get fired. Not just the employee, Lester Jones, who did it. The CFO, the team president should all be let go. There is not a scenario where I would have had an employee walk away with $3.8 million that I would not have been aware of. And I don't care how high it went or how low it stayed. Whether it was done under the nose of a junior person and the accounting department who actually aided and abetted in it and knew how to hide it from the CFO. I don't care about any of the reasons. I care about the result. Yes, you know I play the result as a consequentialist. And the result is that I was in charge at a time when someone had the hubris to believe that they could charge things on the credit card, they could live a life that's not theirs in a way not consistent with their income or money saved. And they're doing it on the heels of saying that the team is incurring these expenses, therefore pay them back. I almost couldn't believe it, Coca. Federal prosecutors in this case are already saying, listen, we've got this in the bag. This employee took recoupment of an expense for a team stay in Vegas, and the team didn't stay at that place in Vegas. It's all made up. It's all expenses made and incurred by the employee himself. What do you do if you're the Atlanta Hawks and you've got this? Do you remember the Jacksonville Jaguars story? Do you remember the employee who was a gambling addict and an addict of nice things and took all of that money from the Jaguars without the Jaguars even knowing? Do you remember that a competitor of DraftKings agreed to pay some of that money back to the Jaguars in what to me is an astonishing acknowledgement by a company that they've got some level of culpability for the irresponsible actions of other totally unrelated? Do you remember the different stories that we've covered about employee fraud? I've had an epiphany, Coca. And my epiphany is that greed is the issue. And I'm a fan of Greed is Good, Michael Douglas, Wall Street. I'm a fan of business first, of making money first. The greed that I have comes at the expense of stupidity, comes at the expense of lack of clarity of the other side and what they want or what they're trying to achieve. The greed I have comes because of my perceived ability to surround myself with intelligent people who can help get what I want at the expense of less intelligent people. My greed is to charge as much money as anyone's willing to pay for a product that I'm selling. I don't know how to argue against that level of greed. But the level of greed required to break a law means that you are valuing that over your freedom. You are valuing a material good more than a material item, more than you are valuing your ability to not get violated. That I don't understand. In preparing for today's show, Coke and I were talking about the different emails, the different voicemails, the different topics, and asked me a very important question. How do you get to the numbers that we talk about in these cases? If you steal a penny that is not yours from the ground, use a penny that is not yours from a counter, that used to be a thing, folks. When you're willing to take a candy bar from a candy store, can we all agree that gateway crimes like gateway drugs, there may be a level of overstatement that is used by parents in an effort to control and form behavior of their kids? Can we agree that lawmakers have to differentiate between what is petty and what is major? The mentality of getting $500 fraudulently from your company because you overstate an invoice, that's called expense reimbursement fraud. The government doesn't care about that. You're not going to get charged. You may get fired by overstating your expenses, by charging a dinner that is not actually a business dinner because you say, hey, what do you think about yesterday's election? All right, we talked business. Charge it to the company. I'm not talking about that. Do you think that people who engage in that would necessarily then follow by engaging in something so much more egregious where it adds up in the millions and you are making up something? I've just never believed it. I've never, having run a company, believed that the petty stuff that I saw would then grow into the disease that is what Lester Jones is alleged to have committed. I never viewed that you take $5,000, $10,000, then all of a sudden it's going to be $200,000, $300,000, $2 million, $5 million. How is there not a point in somebody's brain where they say, wow, I am now at risk of something because someone's going to notice? Is it possible that I went through 18 years and other companies that I've run, other boards that I've been on, where there would be $100 and $1,000 that gets misplaced or misused and I wouldn't see it? Yes, it's a guarantee. Is there an example where there would be $1 million that would be missing that I would not be able to keep track of? I guarantee you no. Why? Because I draw the line between what I think is something I need to focus on and what I think is something that I can't focus on. I am not going to focus on a rounding error of a couple $100. I'm not going to focus on a budget line item that's above budget by $200 or below budget by $200 and ask why, and then try to figure out what people are doing. I'm just not going to do it. You miss the mark by $1 million. You have a level of expense that is inexplicable by that amount of money. It is going to be noticed and dealt with. And on top of that, it's going to be a crime. And on top of that, you're going to lose your freedom. The other people around you, your bosses, will just lose their jobs. You are going to lose your freedom. Was it worth it? Is it ever worth it? Do you really just look at what you're doing and say, hey, it's just business. Sorry, Hawks, this is nothing personal.